So shopping for rugs is challenging. It can be overwhelming. And you don't really know what you're getting, the quality, they're expensive, so you want to make the right decision. Well, I'm here to tell you about Revival Rugs. Revival was created to disrupt the rug industry, which is filled with notoriously overpriced pieces or low quality rugs that won't last. So Revival rugs are works of art. They're beautiful. They curate one-of-a-kind collections, new rugs, vintage rugs, without the markup. You go on the website, they show the rugs in pictures in rooms. You can get a really good idea of what these rugs will look like. My son just got the Halo rug, an 8x10, an incredibly reasonably priced rug for a guy that just bought his first house, with an eye on evolving customer needs and dedication to blending tradition with innovation. Revival Rugs continue to weave quality, style, and purpose into every piece. Visit revivalrugs.com/fluster and use the code FLUSTER20 for 20% off your first order. Once again, that's revivalrugs.com/fluster and use code FLUSTER20. One more time, that's revivalrugs.com/FLUSTER with the code FLUSTER20 to save 20% off. You are working on this. We've got some things that we're going to do. We've got some plans that we're going to put in place. And together, the adults in the child's life need to consistently follow through. And I know I use the alcohol analogy all the time. If you had somebody in your house that was really struggling with alcoholism, and somebody else in the family kept showing up with a 6-pack of Bud, that wouldn't work. And so when somebody says, well, I don't believe in anxiety, what does that even mean? Right? Fine. Believe what you're going to believe. But here are the steps in order to increase your child's ability to step into the world. We don't even have to call it anxiety.
Welcome to Season 7 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we'll talk about managing anxiety and all the other emotions too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious. I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author. I've been a therapist for 35 years. Parenting can be a flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll tell you what to do and what to say.
Hi, Lynn.
Hey, Ed.
How was your weekend?
The weather was terrible.
Yes.
I'm ready for spring, of course, as I've been saying for a while, but this is the life of a New Hampshire girl. But my weekend started with my son buying a house.
It's a big moment.
It is a big moment. Yeah. And selfishly, the house is 45 minutes from me, but that's a big deal. Like going with your child and looking at a house and, we're like, how much do you step in? But it's all good. And they got the house and they really wanted the house. And yeah, it's kind of interesting when you're watching it as a parent versus in it yourself.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, that's great. One of the things that we talk about on this podcast all the time are the things that parents do for their kids, both helpful and not so helpful.
Yes.
So we thought today we would talk about some of the things that parents do, often unintentionally, that may actually be undermining the goal that they have to ease their child's anxiety.
Yeah. We talk a lot about accommodation and making sure that you're not doing the disorder. I always talk about anxiety as a cult leader and make sure that you don't work for the cult leader. And all of those things are things that I introduce families to when they start working with me. Today is going to be a little bit different because I have a list of things that families do when they are actively working to fix the problem. So maybe they're in therapy, they're learning about it, they're trying to change the patterns. But these are the things that I have seen over the years. It's almost like I can kind of predict when a family starts doing these things that it's not going to go as smoothly as I want it to go. Yeah. So they're like little yellow flags, little warnings, like, These are pretty consistent things that show up. So This is going to be sort of like, hey, don't do these things. Or pay attention if you're doing these things, just to increase people's awareness. Because again, like you say, they're undermining what they want. They're not trying to do these things, but it can cause a little bit of friction. You're getting in the way. We're on the right track and you're getting in the way. Yeah.
They are trying and are successful likely in many elements, but they're doing things that are undermining their larger intent.
Yeah. They're like riding the brakes.
Sure.
Just get your foot off the brake here. And I think one of the things that happens too is then I have to have a lot of conversations about these things. Say we're trying to get from point A to point B. And if I have to keep saying like, hey, you're riding the brake, it just gunks it up a little bit. These are things that just sort of gunk it up.
Sure.
Yeah. In the spirit of my directness, I'm going to be pretty straightforward about it.
Great.
Yeah. So the first one is, and this is a big one, and this is one I totally understand, is that very often when kids are having physical symptoms, the place that many parents start is they go to the pediatrician or they go to the family doctor. And I am never, ever, ever against a family getting more information just to make sure that we can rule things out. So if a child has a stomach ache or a child is getting headaches, or sometimes kids just say they don't feel well, I am very, very pleased and grateful when somebody arrives and they say, we did all this and we found out and there's really nothing else going on. In conjunction with that, what I am also seeing is that the physical symptoms make complete sense based on the anxiety that's going on. For example, a child is having tummy aches, but they don't have them on Saturday morning, or they don't have them on Friday night, or a child is saying that they feel sick, but they don't feel sick when they're engaging in an activity that is really familiar or pleasant or comfortable. So we're seeing this combination of there's some physical symptoms. The pediatrician, the family doctor has said, we don't see anything wrong here. And then what the family continues to do, what the parents continue to do, is to seek out somebody who will give them a diagnosis of some sort of physical ailment. And that is just hard because I don't want to say to the parents, like, well, you shouldn't keep looking. But sometimes I do say that. But there's a list of diagnoses that kids get that then get in the way of us actually dealing with the problem. Or they're using a lot of over-the-counter medications to deal with the symptoms. So maybe you've got a child who's got tummy aches, and so you're giving them a lot of Tums, or you start changing their diet in ways like maybe even you went and got some testing done to make sure they don't have any food allergies, and everything's coming up fine, but you continue to search and search and search. What is the reason that my child is having tummy aches? And I'm saying, this is really what anxiety does. And they're like, yeah, we believe you, but we're still going to go and search for another answer. One of the things that very often happens is that if you keep going to different people, and it could be a doctor, it could be some other kind of practitioner, you're going to get something. They're going to give you something, and it just gets in the way of dealing with what we need to deal with. So that's one of the things. And then the other thing too is that when I'm working with a family and I have an approach that I'm using, which people who listen to the podcast know the approach I use is both clinically sound. There's a lot of evidence to support it. They want to go to another therapist. They want to go to somebody else. And sometimes people will say to me, well, you're dealing with the anxiety. Maybe we should go to somebody else that lets her talk about her feelings. So I'm going to take her to another therapist, or we're going to go as a family to a different therapist. One person said to me once, you're dealing with the behavioral stuff, but we really need somebody to deal with the emotional stuff. I'm just going to say that makes no sense. It makes no sense. Because anxiety is very connected to both behavior and thoughts and feelings. And when you start saying, we're going to parse this out and we're going to have one person deal with this and one person deal with that, it just doesn't make sense. It's this idea that we don't have enough information yet. And we're going to keep searching and searching and searching until somebody tells us what we want to hear. Now, here's what's interesting to me. I'm not sure what they want to hear.
Mm.
Like, what are they looking for? What are they hoping for?
Do they want to be perhaps, in quotes, let off the hook a bit? Because a lot of what you talk about can be difficult. It's helpful to have someone say, well, it's not anything that you're doing, it's because of blueberries.
Right, exactly. And also, I think that a lot of times when you go to some sort of healthcare provider, they are trying to treat the symptom. So a very common thing that happens if you've got a child who's terribly afraid of vomiting, right? Emetophobia, and they're living their life around not feeling nauseous. And so somebody with the best of intentions will prescribe Zofran, which is an anti-nausea medication. I mean, I've had plenty of kids who go to the emergency room because they're having a panic attack because they think that they're going to get sick. They're not sick. They think they're going to get sick. They're worried about that. And somebody provides Zofran. So very often they're using the tools they have in their toolbox, which is, let me give you this thing that you take. That brings up a whole other thing about placebos. But very often if we can say, well, I think it's because of this, or I think it's because of that. It is interesting, having been in this profession for all the years I've been in, is what are the diagnoses that sort of cycle through? Because there's a lot of these diagnoses that I hear that then become kind of popular and then they lose popularity or they become even kind of trendy. But I think you're right. I mean, I even had plenty of kids who have said, what you're telling me is not going to fix this. I'm not going to do what you need, what you're telling me to do to fix this. And I just want a pill, or I just want somebody to say, the reason you feel this way is because of this. And if you stop doing this, you'll feel better. But they don't want to do what I'm telling them. They want a simpler solution. And I totally understand it, but that really gunks up the work. It really gunks up the work. Yeah.
Yes. Well, you're asking, of course, anxious children to often engage in the very activities that make them more anxious. So there's like a built-in, to use that brake on the car metaphor, they're very inclined to push on that brake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're trying to get out of it. So it's not that they're anxious about being on the school bus. It's that they have something wrong with their tummy that makes them feel sick on the school bus. And who wants to feel sick on the school bus? So I totally understand it, but it gets in the way. And I have found also, just in general, that when there are too many cooks in the kitchen, that it makes my job harder. I definitely like cooks in the kitchen that I'm collaborating with. I get a lot of great referrals from occupational therapists that are seeing sensory stuff, but they're like, yeah, there's a lot of anxiety. But when they're doing it not in a collaborative way, when they come in and say, well, we went and saw this other person and she thinks that it might be fill in the blank, that makes it hard on me. And one of the things, actually, I didn't used to do this when I first started practicing, but I certainly do it now, is that people will say, well, we're seeing somebody else and we'd also like to add you in.
Yes.
I won't do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, if they're seeing another therapist, like sometimes people say, well, we're seeing another therapist and we'd like to have you work with us as well. If it's about the same problem, if they were dealing with an anxious family, I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes it too complicated. And it's too hard on the family too.
You have a lot of practical experience now that it's not effective.
Correct. Yes. And it makes me frustrated because I'm not able to get where I think I can get this family to get. So that's a little bit tricky. Yeah.
What's the next one?
The next one is when parents see their child's anxiety as unique or different from everybody else's anxiety. So one of the things that makes it easier to deal with anxiety, that makes it more helpful, is if we recognize that this thing I say, it's predictable, it's redundant, and it's persistent. The content doesn't matter. I talk about that all the time. What you worry about doesn't matter. And I'm not even really thrown by the severity of the symptoms because it's really just the radio and the song is the same. It's just whether or not the volume is up or the volume is down. So the level of impairment, right? That's what people freak out about, understandably, of course. But the process of this thing, the way this thing operates, it's not unique. And when I am working with families and I'm saying, okay, so this is what we're going to do, and I have a way to do it, and I try and keep it simple. Sometimes it's hard, but very clear to the family where we're going. If a family continues to come back and say, but this is different, or this is unique, or we have to do something. I had one person say, I know this is how you treat everybody else's anxiety, but this is the way my child's anxiety is different. It's unique. I'm not sure you're familiar with this type of anxiety, that kind of stuff. All of that really gets in the way because the goal of the anxiety disorder is to make it feel complicated, overwhelming, mysterious, that there are all these different components to it that we have to figure out. And when we strip those away and we say, okay, so anxiety shows up and its goal is to avoid unless it can get certainty and comfort. And the solution is to step in so that your brain can have some experiential learning and we can rework these systems. That's what we want to do. My job is always to simplify. And when people come in and they're like, this is different, this is unique. No, it's not. And that makes it a little bit more tricky for me to deal with.
Sure. Akin to someone saying, you talk about children being afraid of bees, but my child is afraid of wasps. And
Right.
we need to address that specific anxiety, Lynn.
Yeah. Or they'll say, well, I'm sure you see a lot of children that might be afraid of bees, but my child is afraid of everything. Or, you know what? It would be a lot simpler if my child was just afraid of one thing. So if my child was just afraid of bees or just afraid of dogs or just afraid of this, that would be easier. But this is far more complicated because they're afraid of a lot of different things. Well, what it comes down to is they're afraid of uncertainty. The content jumps around. And you know what? Even if somebody is just really anxious about one thing, it can become incredibly powerful because if you're afraid of just germs, if you're afraid of just vomit, if you're afraid of just clouds, right? It takes over. So its job is to take over. So we've really got to step out of this idea of this is unique, this is different, this is more complicated, this is harder to solve. This has a very important root cause. All of that stuff just makes it harder to do what we need to do.
Let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and talk about a few more things that people unintentionally, in most instances, are doing that undermine their intended progress with you.
All right. I've got a vacation planned. And guess what? On the top of my list is going and getting one of Quince's premium luggage options and stylish tote bags for my next trip. And the best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. When I was on my last trip, I wore this great silk blouse that I got at Quince. By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman, passes the savings right on to us. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I love that. For your next trip, treat yourself to the luxe upgrades you deserve from Quince. Go to quince.com/fluster for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/fluster to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/fluster. I love my kitty. What I don't love about my kitty is the way the litter box can stink up the whole house. Spring is in the air. You know what's not in the air of my house? Stinky litter box stink. That's because we've been using Pretty Litter. It obliterates odors so we can enjoy all the wonderful scents of spring without smelling kitty litter. It's a non-clumping formula. It traps odor and moisture. It's ultra absorbent and lightweight, low dust. 1 6-pound bag works for up to a month. And Pretty Litter gives me peace of mind. It changes color to indicate early signs of potential illnesses in my kitty, like urinary tract infections or kidney issues. Since Pretty Litter ships free right to my front door, I never run out. I don't have huge kitty litter bags taking up space. I don't have to go out in the cold, lug those huge tubs from the store to my car and into my house. Pretty Litter helps keep my house smelling clean and fresh. Try it and you'll love it. Go to prettylitter.com/flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. That's prettylitter.com/flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. prettylitter.com/flusterclux. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details.
Hey parents, how would you like a show that makes bedtime, bath time, mealtime, and break time more fun for your kids? Then check out Who Smarted, the podcast that turns everyday moments into awesome learning adventures for kids aged 7 to 11, and grown-ups too. But don't just take my word for it. Here's what Mom Jenny says.
I love Who Smarted because it makes learning fun for my kids. And I love it too. We listen together on car rides, and it sparks the best conversations. It's the perfect way to make the most of our time in the car and connect as a family. Who Smarted is the podcast my kids ask for every single car ride.
With fun, fast-paced episodes on science, history, and so much more, Who Smarted makes learning exciting for the whole family. We invite you to listen now for free wherever you get your podcasts. That's Who Smarted, wherever you get your podcasts.
Who Smarted?
Okay, we're back. All right, Ed, we're back, and we're talking about the things that people do that gunk up their best intentions. The riding the brake analogy, right? Get your foot off the brake. We've talked about calling in too many people, too many cooks in the kitchen, going after these physical symptoms and looking for some sort of explanation that's outside of an explanation that we already have, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so here's one that I actually see quite a bit. Parents who get to a certain point where they're going to dip their toe in, they're going to try it, but if their child gets upset with them, or their child starts having difficulty crying, screaming, throwing a temper tantrum, the parents really back off. And the problem is that that's exactly what the anxiety is looking for. Anxious people, kids and adults, are really good at finding ways to get those other demanding people to back off. Because remember, it wants certainty and comfort. And if it can't get it, then it wants avoidance. And so the hard part for parents, this is my job to be able to let them know that they're on the right track. But the hard part is that as you do this, we want to do it with love and support and empathy and validation. But as we do it, your child is going to feel distress. And you're going to feel distress too. So you're going to have doubts. You're going to think you're a bad parent. You're going to think that you're mean. But what I always remind people is that before they came to see me, it wasn't like everything was going smoothly. And then now their child is in distress. Their child was in distress a lot, and they were just stepping in to try and get rid of the distress as quickly as possible. And now your child is also going to feel distress, but there's a good outcome that we're looking for. So rather than your child's distress leading to more anxiety and ultimately sometimes your child becoming more depressed or more isolated, we're going to use this distress with a good outcome in mind. Sort of like going to physical therapy, you feel pain. I was at my chiropractor this morning working on my other frozen shoulder because I had one frozen now, and it hurts when he gets in there. It hurts, but it's for a good purpose. So I'm going to tolerate the discomfort. I'm going to tolerate what he's doing to my shoulder because I'm going to get an outcome that's ultimately going to get me where I want to be.
And might this be an avenue where that front loading is helpful? As we're working on this, big emotions are going to come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the support. Now some kids don't want a hug. And sometimes parents will say like, do you want me to give you a hug? And they'll be like, no, you're the worst mother ever. Why would I ever hug you? So that's okay too. I think that this is the time where parents really have to work on not taking their child's distress personally, which is super hard. And I've said this many times because this gem that I got from Michael Yapko is the differentiation between something that impacts you in a difficult way and something that you have to take personally. So your child's distress is going to impact you, but it's your job at that point to be able to tolerate it. Now, there's another thing too I just want to say is that when kids are in distress like this is when parents talk too much. So before they pull out, before they abandon the plan, lots of times they're talking. And sometimes they're providing too much empathy, which is an interesting thing. But the more that you're saying, like, I know this makes you feel bad. I know this is hard. I know this is difficult. We want to say that once or twice. But the goal during these moments when you're in distress and your child is in distress is to be a steady presence, but to not talk too much. And the more that you get in there and the more that you coach, the more that you coax, the more that you beg, the more that you plead, oftentimes the worse things get. So it's about being able to tolerate it. Yeah.
And also reminding of past successes.
That's right. Yep. That's one of the puzzle pieces, right? How do we bridge back to past successes? But one of the things, though, that happens often is that you start reminding them of these things when they're really heightened, when they're really emotional. Kids don't really absorb much at all when they're in that state. So again, the front loading. The other thing I do in my office, which I've talked about, is that I predict for parents that their kids are going to get really pissed off. So I'll be giving them the plan and I'll say, so this sounds good now, right? You like this idea, but I guarantee that in 3 or 4 days when you say, oh, that's your worry talking. Oh, let's pull out Louise. Louise is being very bossy, that there's going to be a point when your kid's going to be like, don't ever say that to me again. And I also just anticipate for them that they're going to say hurtful things. They're going to say you're a bad parent. I hate you. I hate Lynn Lyons. And then when it happens, parents are like, oh, this is what Lynn said would happen. So knowing going in that you're going to have a lot of distress, this is the thing that gets parents oftentimes, gets them in the pickle they're in, is that they're really having a hard time tolerating any of their child's distress, which means that I can give all of the most brilliant things to do and we can set it up and I can front load and we can give all the information they need. And as soon as they hit that place where their child is distressed, they bail. And what you have to remember is very often, the reason you got to this place of impairment in the first place is because this family in general has a really low tolerance for any distress. So that's one of the skills we're trying to bump up. We're not doing it purposely to make a child feel uncomfortable for no reason. We're doing it because the goal on the other side is that we can tolerate this and we can keep moving. And that's something that parents need to hear very directly. If I keep giving you things to do and you keep coming back in and telling me you couldn't do them or you didn't do them because your child got too upset or you felt too uncomfortable, we're not going to get anywhere.
Right.
Yeah. It's not about torturing them. It's about loving and supporting them. But you've got to be able to tolerate a good chunk of distress for a period of time. And it gets better. All right. There's a few more. Shall I keep going?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you're listening out there and you're like, oh, crap. It's okay. I'm giving you this information so you know this is all about evolving and changing and being aware of these patterns. And I'm pretty sure that if there are any clinicians listening and they would be like, they're nodding along. They're like, yes, 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 this makes it so hard. Okay, so here's just a few of I will call them my clinical pet peeves that are also like little red flags for me. And I call parents on this all the time, is when a parent is talking about their child's anxiety and they use we as a way to describe what's going on with their child.
The royal we.
Yeah, the royal we. So they're like, we are having a very difficult time getting to bed on time. Or we are having a difficult time, blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, you are too? Oh my gosh, that's terrible. You're having difficulty sleeping in your own bed? Oh my gosh, that must be hard. And then everybody has a little bit of a laugh. But what you're saying to your child is our problems are the same and that we are on the same plane. So when you say to a little child or even an older child, we can't do this thing, then a child feels like, okay, but you're supposed to be able to do this thing. Why are you including me in this? I get why parents are doing it because they don't want to point the finger and they don't want to say, well, this is our child's problem. But the parent can say, I have a difficult time following through when Elizabeth gets so upset because she really has a hard time getting out of the house on time, or she really has a hard time sleeping in her own bed, or she has a really hard time going to the dentist. But that royal we says, this is a problem that we're all on the same level. I want parents to differentiate. I want them to be able to say, I'm here to support you. I'm here to help you, but we are not in the same situation together because I'm the grown-up and you're the child. That's an important distinction to make. It gets scary for kids when they feel like their parents aren't at another level. It gets scary for kids when they think like, we're all in this together. We want the parents to differentiate in that way. So no more we. And I hear schools do that too. Like sometimes I'm in a meeting and even like the school counselor or something and say like, well, we've been having difficulty sitting still in our chair. And I'll be like, you have difficulty with that too?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a big
And-
problem. It's
Yeah.
validating also in a negative respect for the child that's ideally trying to move past this. Oh, well, mom and dad really struggle with this too. This is a serious, immovable thing.
Right. And it just becomes kind of comical. And so you would never say, if you were potty training your little 3-year-old, you wouldn't say like, we have a hard time making it to the potty. You'd never say that in a business meeting. You talk about yourself as the adult who has these skills, who now is capable of teaching the child these skills. That's what we're trying to convey. Okay, here's another one. I'm kind of on a roll here. And this one I've talked about before. It's when parents get into the blaming role. So when I am talking to parents, and I'm not even talking about blaming me, parents are really nice to me. Like parents don't really blame me, and I'm not blaming parents either. But what I hear very often is parents getting into that blaming of other kids, sometimes blaming of schools, sometimes blaming of the other parent, particularly if the parents are not together. And so there's some sort of animosity, but not necessarily blaming of other family relatives. So when you're with your child or when they're in here in a family session and I hear the parent consistently saying, well, she wouldn't have this problem if it weren't for blank, or the reason she was so upset was because the bus driver spoke harshly to her. That's why she can't get on the school bus. Or she would happily go to soccer if only her coach had a better way with kids or something like that. And when the child hears that, again, we're looking for external reasons why this child is having difficulty. We want to make it between the anxiety, the worry that we pull out and give a name so that we're changing the relationship to the worry and the anxiety when it shows up rather than looking for other things or other circumstances to blame. Do certain things contribute? Absolutely. If you are a child who's having a difficult time getting on the school bus, it is so much better if you have Mary Poppins as your school bus driver than if you had some grumpy person who's not very flexible. But when parents are not doing what they need to do or are not stepping in, and the reason is because other people aren't cooperating, usually it's that other people aren't cooperating with the worry, and that's where it becomes problematic for sure.
Sure. And a child struggling with anxiety who feels that external forces are the supreme overlord will not develop agency and confidence that they can take the next step.
Right. And I say this all the time. The issue isn't that we have to make the world cooperate with your worry. We can adjust the world. I mean, my son quit the baseball team in high school because the coach was really awful and really mean. And he was like, I don't want to participate in that. So we can make those decisions. But when we're looking at anxiety, remember, anxiety is really good at promoting things to an emergency when they're not an emergency. And it can also promote conflict or promote struggles or promote obstacles to a level that then impairs moving forward. So we're trying to say, this is going to be hard. This is going to be challenging. And you're going to, like you said, you're going to have the confidence or you're going to have the autonomy to step into this thing rather than we're going to blame the world for not cooperating. Yeah. You know what I hear that a lot with? I hear that a lot when kids are in group projects. I hear that a lot, that the problem is that the other people in the group are causing anxiety for the child. And that may be the case. I mean, one of the things I think that kids really learn from group projects, and we could do a whole episode on this, maybe we should, is how to be flexible and how to manage with a bunch of different personalities. How often does that come up in life? All the time. Yeah. It's that blaming that we really want to pay attention to.
Sure. And we've talked a lot about how requiring of the world to function and proceed in a very specific way doesn't make for wildly likable behavior.
Yeah, right. Instagram is driving me crazy now, and I'm on it for my work, but I've got to stop looking because I just saw this meme or whatever you call it that somebody put out that said, the goal is not to help your child conform to the world. The goal is to teach the world how to accept your child. And I was like, really? I'm not sure. We don't want to go one direction or another. Say you have a child that's on the spectrum, or you have a child like we want people to know, like this is what they can do or this is what they struggle with, of course. But I think this idea that if the world isn't cooperating, if the world isn't complying, if the world is putting up challenges, then it's the world's fault. That just doesn't give your child the skills to manage flexibly in all sorts of different situations.
And it promotes isolation as they age.
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't what I expect, or these people aren't cooperating. Like, I'm not going to be on the baseball team because so-and-so is fill in the blank. I'm not going to go to this school. I'm not going to go to it just makes your world smaller. The more that you think the world has to accommodate your need for certainty and comfort, the smaller your world gets. I mean, that's just a fact. I see it all the time.
And the smaller your world gets, particularly with adolescents and teens, vastly more likely that they suffer from depression.
Yeah. The most heartbreaking thing to me, the thing that is hardest for me is when a parent comes in here and says, my child doesn't have any friends, or he's not leaving the house, or he doesn't see anybody or talk to anybody. That is a really, really sad place for kids to get. And parents are also totally heartbroken by that. So we've just got to make sure, if we're talking about prevention, of course, and we're also talking about the things that gunk up the works, that blaming or that expectation is something that is a big red flag for me. All of these things I go after pretty directly and pretty early on when I'm working with a family, when I'm meeting a new family. So you've just got to pay attention to them in your own family to make sure that you're not promoting these things, because they don't end well. That's the bottom line. They just don't end well. What happens when you run into somebody? He says, hey, how you doing? And then without even thinking, you just say, oh, I'm good. How are you? Well, maybe you really want to mean it when you say that you're doing fine. That's where Headspace comes in. Headspace is the app that helps over 100 million people with their mental health and well-being with guided meditations, mindfulness practices, breathing and calming exercises, and so much more. It reduces stress, boosts your mood, and it really has an impact on sleep. I actually was just at a conference and listening to the Jon Kabat-Zinn talk about the value of meditation. So many people are struggling these days with being able to just quiet that monkey mind, being able to fall asleep, being able to fall back asleep if you wake up in the middle of the night. Headspace has all sorts of different meditations. It's got meditations for running, meditations for sleep, a 1-minute meditation, a 5-minute meditation. You have no excuse. You can fit this into your life. It's worth it. Feel good and mean it when you say it. For a limited time, you get Headspace free for 60 days. Go to headspace.com/fluster. That's HEADSPACE.com/fluster to unlock all Headspace free for 60 days. Headspace.com/fluster. So recently I was down at a big mental health conference and got to listen to Jon Kabat-Zinn talk about the value of meditation right there in front of me. I came home and I immediately watched his class on meditation. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's on Masterclass. Who doesn't want to listen to Esther Perel talk about relationships, Michael Lewis about how to tell a great story? There are classes that deal with empathy, that talk about cooking. I don't even like to cook, but it's just so interesting to hear people talk about what they do so well. With Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. It's the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. And just for $10 a month, billed annually, a membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. You can access Masterclass on your phone, your computer, your smart TV, or even in audio mode. So if you travel, you can take it with you. You can learn on the go. I highly recommend getting Masterclass. The classes really make a difference. 88% of members feel that Masterclass has made a positive impact on their lives. It's made an impact on mine. I mean, listening to Jon Kabat-Zinn, listening to Joan Benoit Samuelson talk about running. I mean, these are people who just do it right. Our listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/fluster. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/fluster. masterclass.com/fluster.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby. Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Okay, so now back to the show. All right, I got one more. This is going to surprise nobody. Unless this is the first time you've ever listened to this podcast, this is going to not surprise you.
All right, let's hear it.
Inconsistency, people, right? Inconsistency, particularly when parents don't agree, but parents need to be on the same page. I'll tell you, I was working with a couple a few years ago, probably like 5 years ago now. And one of the parents was really interested in getting help for their child. It was not subtle. The child really needed some help. The other parent had been raised in an environment in which talking about things to strangers or sharing your dirty laundry, etc., was not what we did. And therapy in general was just like annoying, crazy people that were trying to get you to blah, 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 blah. And working with those two parents, right? We had a kid who was definitely struggling. It was not mysterious. It was not complicated. It was really run of the mill, so to speak, separation anxiety. But having one parent on one page and having the other parent not even in the library made it virtually impossible for me to get anywhere with them. Yeah. And I had kind of a come to Jesus moment with them. I said, look, here's the deal. I know how to fix this. I know how to help. I know what to do. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm good at my job, but I can't help if the two of you are spending all of your time battling about whether or not you're going to follow through. I don't remember how long they hung in there, but they sort of disappeared, which is what happens sometimes. Maybe they came for like 2 or 3 more sessions and then I never saw them again. So consistency means that you are here, you are working on this. We've got some things that we're going to do. We've got some plans that we're going to put in place. And together, the adults in the child's life need to consistently follow through. It means they need to support each other. And I know I use the alcohol analogy all the time. If you had somebody in your house that was really struggling with alcoholism and somebody else in the family kept showing up with a 6-pack of Bud, that wouldn't work. So when somebody says, well, I don't believe in anxiety, what does that even mean? Fine, believe what you're going to believe, but here are the steps in order to increase your child's ability to step into the world. We don't even have to call it anxiety. I get being a little fed up with the mental health world because I myself am fed up with the mental health world. But if we just talk about it concretely, here are the steps we need to take. That inconsistency between parents, like a lot of times people will cancel appointments a lot, which I get happens, but I know the people that are consistent and I know the people that are inconsistent, and it makes a huge, huge difference. A huge difference. Yeah.
That clarity for the child, that singularity of focus at the home.
Yeah.
Hugely helpful.
Yeah. And just a consistent message. In anything, if you've got one adult that's giving one message and one adult that's giving another message, that's confusing for kids. So if you've got one parent who believes that the child should get all A's and the other parent who believes that homework is stupid, what's the kid supposed to do? They got to pick a side. And with anxiety, guess which side they're going to pick? The one that accommodates more, the one that's easier, the parent that will step in and say, we're not doing this, or going to therapy is stupid. That's what the anxiety disorder wants. That's really important too. Yeah. All right. So that's kind of like a rundown of all the things that make it harder. And of course, my job is always to try and make it smoother and easier rather than harder. So those are just some of the things that I see pretty consistently.
Right. And what's your batting average for getting people when they hear that to say, yeah, I see what you mean? Or is there strong resistance pretty consistently?
Well, it's kind of both. A lot of people will say, I see what you mean, and then still have trouble doing it. I would say at this point, Like, I think it's all in the delivery. And I think people do kind of respect how straightforward I am. And I'm also, I mean, I think you can attest to this as my brother. I'm also just like a pretty nice person. So I'm good at sort of normalizing, like, and I hope that right now, even in this episode that we just recorded, I'm normalizing these things. They happen all the time. It's okay. What's my batting average? When people show up, they definitely want help.
Yes.
And they're looking for solutions. I've got to present it in a way that makes it palatable. And I think sometimes if I say like, okay, so this is what I think is getting in our way, or these are the things that are gunking up the works right now, most of the time, I would say 75% of the time, people are open to hearing that and willing to look at those patterns. I also say, like, this is my job. My job is to interrupt these family patterns. And so if I frame it that way, like, here's just another pattern we have to interrupt, then it doesn't feel as threatening. I get it. Imagine like you're coming in and you feel totally vulnerable and you feel embarrassed and you're ashamed that your kid is having this trouble. And maybe people have told you and you haven't listened and they're relatives. You're in a very vulnerable place. So my job is to just make it matter of fact. Look, this is what's going to get in our way and this is what's going to help. So let's see if we can all be on the same page. I'd say 75%. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I wish I batted 1,000.
Well, no one does.
I know, it's true.
75%, that's pretty good. Hall of Fame numbers in any sport, right?
Yeah. You know what? Speaking of Hall of Fame numbers in any sport, here's an interesting example of how resistant people are to breaking their patterns. Do you remember a while ago, and I'm sure you could look this story up, but this guy determined that if you throw free throws underhand, you know, like granny style,
sure,
that your percentages were higher. And he started doing it. I think he was an NBA player. And of course, like everybody would make fun of him and the crowd would just jeer him because he'd come up to the foul line and then just do like the granny free throw. And he stopped doing it because there was so much teasing and everything. But I wonder now, like if you did an experiment and you took all of these incredibly skilled NBA players or even the college players, you know, people watching the NCAA tournament, and had everybody just start doing the underhand free throw if their percentages would go up. This guy said they would, and nobody will do it. They won't do it. That's human nature.
Well, people like you call it the granny free throw. That doesn't help.
Yeah, it's true. Well, we have to come up with a better name for it. Yeah, you're right. That's not good marketing.
No, your pool of people generally making the throws.
Yeah.
Very capable, athletic 20-somethings.
Right. All right. Well, I'll work on marketing with that. You're right. See, it's all in the delivery.
It is.
Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
Ram trucks have always powered American freedom. Now with our Freedom of Choice pricing program, you can choose your offer, cash incentives, or employee pricing for all. Hurry into your local dealer today for details, because nothing stops America and nothing stops Ram. Offer valid on select 2024 and 2025 Rams for non-FCA employees and retirees. $200 admin fee applies. Not all buyers and lessees will qualify. Restrictions apply. Not combinable with other offers. Ends 4/30/25. Ram is a registered trademark of FCA US LLC.